Howdy, this is Jonathan Scott. Welcome to the vlog. Finally, we're here. I've been talking about this module progression for quite some time, and here we are finally talking about the last module in the progression, Q1, Queen of the Demonweb Pits. Before I go any further, I just wanted to show you another channel whose content is usually quite wonderful. Capt Courageous, pronounced Captain Courageous, does a channel on old school RPGs on YouTube. Check his videos out, they're worth the time. On this module Q1, he currently has 2 episodes available. When I was getting ready to run my group through this module, I used his episodes in my prep. It was helpful. Please check the channel out. So anyway, here we go. As usual, as always with these module reviews that I do, please, if you're a player, don't watch this because I'm going to be giving away stuff that'll make your experience less fun. So please don't watch this episode any further if you're a player. Gary was writing a lot back in 1977, 78, and 79. These were the years when D&D moved to its first big edition change, from old D&D to first edition. Gary had written many modules and was writing many books, and was unfortunately too busy to write the ending of his own module series. So, after having written G1 to 3 and then D1 to 3, he left Q1, the last in his series, to the artist David Sutherland. So I guess we should do this the same way we did all the other module reviews. First, the super brief breakdown, then helps on how to run it, and lastly, war stories. The super brief breakdown of the plot. Well, honestly speaking, I'd love to give you one, but there isn't one. Let me explain. In G1, Steading of the Hill Giant Chief, a neighboring village is suffering from attacks by giants and the party is hired to end the threat. If the threat is removed, the party wins. A similar sort of finish line is available in most modules. Do something and you win. Q1 is different though. Lolth may be evil, but she isn't doing anything wrong to anyone that your players are aware of. Aklavdra from the previous modules wasn't put up to her antics by Lolth. She was influenced instead by the Elder Elemental God. The books didn't say who that was. I personally used Cthulhu, but that was my decision. In other words, Lolth, as far as your party is aware, is not an antagonist, and according to the basic storytelling recipe, if there is no antagonist, there isn't a protagonist either. There can't be. In other words, there is no story here. If there is no story, then there is no super brief breakdown. But what if the players choose to attack anyway? What if the players choose to attack someone who isn't attacking them or anyone else they're aware of? So I guess if you're going to put it like that, there is an antagonist here, and it's your party. And if your party is the antagonist, that makes Lolth the protagonist. She is the hero, and your players are the villains. This module suffers from the same elementary plot hole as does S1 Tomb of Horrors or the Lizardmen from B2 that keep on the Borderlands. Neither the Lich Acererak nor the Lizardmen from B2 were bothering anybody. Therefore, there is no good reason to attack them. Therefore, if you do attack them, congratulations, you are the enemy, and those who you are attacking are in their full moral rights to defend themselves. Congratulations, this module has turned your heroes into the bad guys. Turning your heroes into the bad guys. That's the super brief breakdown. Do you like it? Is that the sort of story you want your players to go through, where they all become evil at the end of their careers? Yeah, my party didn't like it. So they went into the module for a while, but then once they realized what was going on, they all chose to stop playing and retire. This one was my fault. I had been pretty focused on my D1 to 3 plot, and once it was finished, I opened up Q1 and started getting ready. A better DM would have opened it up and studied it out months previous. I could have gotten Q1 to work, but it would have required some effort all along the way and not just right there at the end. So for our party, Q1 was a bust. How could I, as DM, have fixed it? I guess that depends on your party and what sorts of campaigns they like to be in. Some parties are evil, and running through Lolth's web like a band of marauding pirates would be quite enjoyable for them. So if that's what you're into, then by all means go have fun. But for my party, they like to see themselves as the heroes. So for us, turning Lolth into an antagonist was an essential. How could Lolth have been more of an antagonist? There's a million ways I could have done that. And for the record, Lolth is up to some evil. Quite a lot of it, actually. The problem is that your party has no way of finding out about it. So how do you get your party to find out about it? Getting your party to find out about the evil she is up to is what you need to do to get the basic storytelling recipe up and running again. Odds are that the best way to begin would have been back starting with the first time Lolth was even mentioned in the progression, back in the module Temple of Elemental Evil on page 26. If she somehow can become an active antagonist back then, the party will eventually have a good reason to pursue her all the way through Q1. So how would I do it specifically? I think I'm going to keep that one to myself until I actually have a chance to use it in a game. Sorry folks, you're going to be a little on your own, but I'll try to be helpful and point you in the right direction. Before I continue, as a sideline, have any of you ever noticed that all the main gods, all the main evil gods that your players come up against in this progression, Zuggtmoy, Blibdoolpoolp, and Lolth, they're all female. All female, and they're all attacking your party. Gary must have been having some woman problems back then. That's just a guess, though. Step 2. Helps on how to run the module. Well, I'll tell you what I can. I don't have a lot of advice, but there's a few things I can offer. In the big map from D1 to 3, there are many areas that Gary left you to design. Encounters, modules, cities. Q1 leaves even more up to you. Here on the Demonweb, on level 4, each door leads your players to at least another planet, or in some instances it may actually lead to an entirely different plane of existence. Nothing here is designed. Only the simplest of descriptions are here for you to use, so if you thought D1 to 3 left you busy, Q1 is an entirely new part-time job for you to enjoy for many years to come. My players only spent time in areas C, the Great Ocean, and E, the Labyrinth of Arachne. I didn't spend enough time in this module to really develop much more than my own versions of the maps. And then for door E, the Labyrinth of Arachne, I did develop a design for an endless dungeon. Here you go, this is how it works. Choose one of these to be your entry, then every time they go through a door, roll an 8-sided die and a 4-sided die. The 8-sided die will tell you which of these next tiles to include, and then the 4-sided die will tell you which way to rotate it. Just simply tape them on, one after another, and you can make this thing as big as you want it to be. If you're using something like Roll20 or other online D&D sites, you just need those 8 maps on the computer, right, and then you rotate them as needed. But then to actually keep track of the big map, you would actually have a real map in front of you that you're constantly adding tiles to with tape. And you just keep that with you, and then you can keep track of what's going on, and your players, I'm sure, will become extremely lost after not a long amount of time. Anyway, that's it. That's all I really have to offer you for this module. No module will ever completely satisfy your party. All modules need to be altered to suit your needs. So my big advice for this is to study it all way out before you begin it, and then be prepared to change it a lot. I don't have any war stories to speak of. I did a few things that could have turned into something big, but my party didn't choose to take the hook. So instead of war stories, I think I'll just move on into a review of the module. David Sutherland, the author, was an artist at the time for TSR. He wasn't a writer. He was an artist. It's kind of surprising that he was chosen to write the module in the first place. Keeping that in mind, it's a very visually attractive module. And I'm not even talking about the pictures, I'm talking about the prose. It's mostly words, like all modules are, but a lot of this module focuses on descriptions of different planes, planets, different locales, and the descriptions of them are all very attractive. It's a very visual module, even though it's mostly just words. Sometimes, though, the preoccupation of the module with the visual can get in the way, though. This is the Demonweb. It's a 4-level pathway that serves as a transportation hub for 21 different doors that sometimes lead to just rooms, but other times lead to different planes. It's very pretty, right? Rumor has it that Mr. Sutherland got this idea from a placemat that he saw once. A placemat, something that you use to have dinner on, right? Each square is 10 feet across. In the web, teleport, fly, levitation, dimension door, those spells, they all behave strangely and none can be depended on. You're allowed, though, to jump from one walkway to the one below it, or climb to the one above it. Ropes of climbing and rods of lordly might can also be used. What would happen, though, if, for example, Lolth had an army of 1,000 soldiers she wanted to take from the start location to the kingdom of Kersidee? Let's see. They start here, they make a few turns, they feather fall at least once, and then all 1,000 will have to make a 40-foot climb up to the higher level where the final door is finally located at. So to travel about 400 feet, they'll have to walk about 600 feet and then climb another 40. It doesn't seem like the wisest method of moving your troops around, right? Here, though, is another design that I made. It's not as pretty and it doesn't look like a web, but if you were a business manager, which one would you prefer to use? On the big map, it's 600 foot of walking and then a 40-foot climb for 1,000 troops. Here, it's just a 60-foot walk. Form follows function. It's one of the coolest phrases in the English language. The other design look cool, but I prefer mine. Next, let's just look at the content of these rooms. Room numbers 1 through 12 are all just full of random monsters.
None of these rooms seem to have a particularly valuable reason for being here. This is the biggest part that's going to seem like the monster condo to you, but it's only 12 rooms, so it's not that big of a deal. But then the next 9 rooms are extremely different. They all open up on different planes or planets, or it's always something huge. What's the purpose of this? What's going on here? And the module doesn't really explain itself very well. It just looks like a big monster condo. I guess this is where you could come in and redesign things just a little. You don't actually have to change the contents of the room, but just come up with a better explanation of why things are where they are. That would be the biggest task in front of you if you wanted to run this module well. For my own part, these rooms will all be places where Lolth is currently conducting campaigns. She's trying to conquer these different regions. Several of these locations, though, may actually be places where she's finding troops for her armies. My advice, choose one of these locales that's being conquered, and then have that be your hook into Q1 for your players. One of these kingdoms may have managed to send a small retinue of NPCs through their door and into the hub. Your party could encounter them somewhere, perhaps even in Oriel-Hay Sinlu. This could be the thing that could turn your experience with this module into something a little fuller and more rewarding. If you do this, though, I suggest that you add one more door to the hub. A door back to the Fane of Lolth. Currently, there is no way back to the Fane from the hub.
One question you might have about running GDQ 1-7 could be this. If the Elder Elemental God is my main antagonist, but Lolth is also an antagonist, isn't that going to make my story crowded? Isn't that going to take away from the main focus of it all? For the record, a similar situation is in a lot of other science fiction fantasy books, and honestly speaking, it's in the main one that D&D was based on. In The Lord of the Rings, the main foe is Sauron, but there was also Saruman. The main ending of the book dealt with Sauron's demise, but in the books anyway, there was also that smaller portion at the very end where Frodo's company went back home and dealt with Sharky, Saruman's other name, right? Having several antagonists in a book is not a problem. If you think about it, there were many in The Lord of the Rings, all of varying sizes and importance to the story. The solution isn't terribly hard. It will require some effort on your part, though. Of all the antagonists, which is the primary one? Then, considering the problem that they've created, how do the other antagonists deal with it? What part do they all play in it? So for GDQ 1-7, when Lolth discovers that the Elder Elemental God is trying to conquer a region of the Earth, how would she feel about that? What sort of mischief would she create to take advantage of the situation for her own benefit? Then when she discovers that the main force fighting against the Elder Elemental God's armies are the players who killed her beloved Lareth back in T1, how would she feel about that? Would that escalate her oppression? It's all for you to choose. Just realize that a story with more than one antagonist is pretty common, and as a writer, and yes, DMs, you are writers, it's your job to understand your NPCs, non-player characters, well enough so the parts they all play in the story make sense.
My players had been playing for 3 years. We had had a lot of fun, but the characters were all over 10th level now, and it seemed to be time to close things down, so this is how we ended the campaign. After the Anti-Solar Institute, after taking out Cthulhu, after all of that, after trying to do Q1 and kind of giving up on it, they all went back to Eastbrook to see how things were, and when they got there, they saw 2 huge storm giants standing there in front of their home. They were armed and armored, and as they approached, the 2 giants smiled warmly at them and bowed. Inside their home, they found the one member of the group who usually never showed up for games sitting down on the floor in the middle of their living room. The players never really felt like kicking him out of the group. He was a good friend with some of the players, so they ended up using him as a house servant instead. Anyway, he was sitting on the floor because there was no other place to sit. While the characters were gone, the kings and queens of the Cloud and Storm Giants, as well as the king and the queen of the Titans, had paid the group a visit and brought treasure with them to pay them for their freedom. Their house was stacked floor to ceiling with gold, and the one player who never came on adventures was sitting there in the middle of the room because there was literally no other place to sit. That one player then also handed over a small box containing 1 ring of 3 wishes for each player. The royalty had come to say thank you, as royalty should. After depositing their funds in the bank, the players decided to move back to Arcadia and to retire there. They all then approached St. Cuthbert's office to speak to him. He wasn't particularly happy to see them. He didn't hate them, but as a rule, whenever he saw them, it usually meant that something bad was about to happen, and St. Cuthbert wasn't looking forward to any more bad. He'd been through enough. Surprisingly, the group just asked St. Cuthbert for jobs in heaven. Their adventures were over, and they all just wanted to be useful and content now. So happily, St. Cuthbert handed out menial jobs to them, and happily the group accepted them. And that's how the campaign ended. So between all the videos I've made on these modules, and I've made a few, right? You should have gotten a pretty good idea of what a campaign looks like, what it feels like, how much fun it can be. Anyway, just something to think about. Have a good week, have good games, have a nice day.